My parents wrote a check for $150,000 to put my brother through business school. Then they sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Nora, some people are meant to lead. You're meant to support." My mother folded her hands like she'd rehearsed it. My father didn't even look up from his coffee. My brother, sitting right there across from me, had the nerve to shrug. Not apologize, not flinch. Just shrug, like the universe had confirmed what he always believed. I remember the hum of the refrigerator. I remember the clock on the wall ticking louder than it should have. I remember pushing my chair back slowly, not dramatically, just enough to stand. Nobody stopped me. Nobody followed me to the door. That night, I loaded my car with everything I owned, which wasn't much, and drove until the suburbs disappeared behind me. 3 years later, when they found out what I'd built without them, every single one of them came knocking, and every single one of them heard the same word. Before I tell you the rest, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from today so I know who's out there. And when this story's over, I want to know, would you have opened that door? Growing up in Dayton, Ohio, our house looked like a catalog ad. White shutters, trimmed hedges, a welcome mat that said blessed. Neighbors thought we had it figured out. What they didn't see was who mopped the floors before company came, who ironed the tablecloths, who made sure the illusion held together every single day. That was me, Nora, the quiet one, the dependable one, the one whose name came second in every sentence. Kyle and Nora, always in that order, like a billing arrangement where he was the headliner and I was the opening act nobody remembered. Kyle was golden, captain of the debate team, valedictorian, early admission to Northwestern. Every report card got taped to the fridge like a trophy. Every award ceremony had Dad in the front row with his phone out recording. When I made honor roll, Mom said, "That's nice, honey," without looking up from her laptop. When I got accepted into the culinary arts program at a state college downstate, Dad set his fork down and said, "Cooking school? That's your big plan?" He said it the way you'd talk about a stain on a shirt. Something to be dealt with, not celebrated. Kyle got a graduation party with 60 guests and a rented tent in the backyard. I got a card with $75 inside and a post-it note from Mom that said, "Proud of you, sweetheart. No party, no tent, no 60 guests." Just a post-it that peeled off before I even got to my room. College split us into different worlds. Kyle moved to Chicago. His apartment was furnished before he even arrived because Mom and Dad drove up a U-Haul the weekend before. They painted his walls. They hung his curtains. When I moved into my dorm, I carried my own boxes up 3 flights of stairs in August heat and assembled my bed frame alone with a YouTube tutorial and a borrowed wrench. Tuition was the real fracture. Kyle's was covered completely, every cent, including a monthly allowance for living expenses. When I asked about help with mine, Dad didn't even pause. We already stretched ourselves for Kyle. "You chose a state school. That was your decision." Mom nodded from behind him like a backup singer hitting the chorus. I signed loan papers the next morning, $47,000 at 7.2% interest. Every digit felt like a door closing. I worked 2 jobs. Mornings at the campus bakery, starting at 4:30 a.m., hands deep in flour before the sun came up. Evenings bussing tables at a steakhouse where the manager yelled and the tips were thin. My grades held, barely, but my body didn't. By sophomore year, I'd lost 15 pounds I didn't have to lose. My hands were raw from bleach and hot water. One night in February, I passed out on the kitchen floor of my apartment, alone, face against cold tile. I woke up to my phone buzzing. A text from Mom. It was a photo of Kyle's new apartment in Lincoln Park. "Look at this view," she wrote with 3 heart emojis. I stared at it until the screen went dark. That spring, a woman named Mrs. Alvarez changed everything. She ran the community kitchen attached to the culinary program, a stocky Puerto Rican woman with silver-streaked hair and a laugh that could fill a warehouse. She noticed me staying late, scrubbing pans long after everyone else had left. One evening, she sat down across from me, set a plate of Arroz con Polo between us, and said, "Mija, you eat. Then we talk." She told me about her own family, how her father had told her cooking was a waste of time, how she'd opened 3 restaurants before she turned 40, lost 2, rebuilt the 3rd. She looked at me and said, "The people who don't believe in you are doing you a favor. They're clearing the room so you can hear yourself think." That sentence lived in my chest for years. She became my mentor. She taught me flavor profiles I'd never imagined, how to balance acidity and fat, how to plate food like it mattered, because it did. She introduced me to her supplier network, local farms within 100 miles that grew everything from heirloom tomatoes to high-altitude honey. She showed me that food wasn't just survival, it was language, and I was finally learning to speak. Graduation came on a Sunday in May. I walked across the stage, diploma in hand, scanning the crowd. Mom and Dad weren't there, Kyle wasn't there. I'd sent the invitation 8 weeks in advance. Mom had texted back, "We'll try." They didn't try. Mrs. Alvarez was in the third row. She stood up and clapped so loud 3 people turned around. After the ceremony, she handed me a small envelope. Inside was a check for $2,000 and a note that read, "First month's rent. Go build something, mija." I cried in the parking lot with the engine running and the AC on full blast. It wasn't the money. It was the fact that a woman I'd known for 2 years believed in me more than the people who'd raised me for 22. After graduation, I moved back to Dayton briefly, renting a room above a hardware store owned by a man named Gerald who smelled like sawdust and didn't ask questions. I worked at a farm-to-table restaurant downtown, learning the business side, watching how the owner managed costs, negotiated with vendors, handled health inspections, all the unsexy parts of food that nobody puts on Instagram. I saved everything, every tip, every paycheck, every tax refund. I kept a spreadsheet on my phone with 2 columns, what I have and what I need. The gap between them shrank slowly, then faster. I didn't call home. Not on Thanksgiving, not on Christmas, not on Mom's birthday. The first few weeks of silence felt heavy, like holding my breath underwater. Therapy helped. I found Dr. Chow through an online directory, a small woman with round glasses and a talent for saying exactly what I needed to hear at the exact wrong moment. She told me once, "You're not punishing them with silence. You're protecting yourself with space. There's a difference." I wrote that on a sticky note and pressed it to my bathroom mirror. I read it every morning while brushing my teeth. Christmas that first year was just me, a frozen pizza and a documentary about mushroom farming. It sounds pathetic. It wasn't. It was the first holiday where I didn't perform gratitude, I didn't feel. The first one where I didn't sit in a room full of people and feel completely alone. By the following spring, I had $23,000 saved, not enough to open a restaurant, but enough to start something smaller. I found the property on a Tuesday afternoon, scrolling through listings on my lunch break. 45 minutes outside Dayton, just past Yellow Springs, there was a farmhouse on 12 acres. The photos showed peeling paint, a collapsed porch, and a barn with a caved-in roof. The listing had been up for 9 months. Price, $68,000. I drove out that evening. The land was beautiful in the way that broken things can be, overgrown and wild and humming with potential. Blackberry bushes crawled up the fence line. A creek cut through the back pasture. The soil was dark and rich when I dug my fingers into it, the kind of dirt that wanted to grow something. I made an offer the next day. The bank approved a small mortgage with my savings as a down payment. Mrs. Alvarez co-signed without hesitation. "You'll pay me back in herbs," she said, grinning. The first 3 months were brutal. No running water for the first 2 weeks until I figured out the well pump. No heat until Gerald drove out with a portable kerosene heater and helped me insulate the worst walls with foam board and plastic sheeting. I showered at the YMCA in town and ate rice and beans out of a pot I washed in creek water. But every failure was mine to fix. Every broken thing was mine to mend. I replaced the porch boards with reclaimed lumber from a barn demolition sale. I patched the roof with YouTube tutorials, and a fear of heights I powered through 1 shingle at a time. I cleared 1/2 an acre by hand, pulling roots until my shoulders burned, and planted my first crop, culinary herbs. Rosemary, thyme, basil, oregano, lavender, sage, mint. Each row straight and deliberate, like sentences in a letter I was writing to myself. A neighboring farmer named Walt saw me struggling with the irrigation one morning and walked over without introduction. He was 60-something, leathery skin, John Deere cap, the kind of man who communicated primarily through nods. He looked at my setup, shook his head once, then spent the next 4 hours helping me reroute the water line. When we were done, he said, "You're either brave or crazy. Either way, the land doesn't care. It just wants you to show up." I showed up, every single day. By the end of the first growing season, I had enough product to approach 3 local restaurants. Mrs. Alvarez connected me with her old suppliers who connected me with chefs in Columbus and Cincinnati. I sold my herbs at a premium because they were fresh, local, and grown with intention. I called the operation Thornfield Farm, a name I chose because I liked the idea of beauty growing from something sharp. Revenue in year 1: $31,000. Barely enough to cover the mortgage and basic expenses. But year 2, I expanded. I added edible flowers, microgreens, and specialty peppers. I built a small greenhouse from salvaged windows and 2x4s. I hired my first part-time employee, a college kid named Diego who had tattoo sleeves and a surprising talent for propagation. By year 3, Thornfield Farm was supplying 14 restaurants across 3 cities. Revenue hit $190,000. I'd paid off Mrs. Alvarez, rebuilt the barn into a processing and packing facility, and started a small online shop selling dried herb blends and infused oils. The local newspaper ran a feature. A food blogger in Columbus wrote a piece titled, "The Farm You Need to Know About." Orders doubled overnight. I remember standing in the greenhouse one evening, Diego packing the last shipment of the day, Marcy, my second hire, a retired school teacher who handled the books, labeling jars at the workbench. The light came through the glass panels in long golden bars. The air smelled like basil and damp earth. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was alive. That's when the quiet ended. It started with a text from Kyle. No context, no greeting, just a screenshot of the newspaper article with a single word. "This you?" I didn't respond. 2 days later, Mom called. I let it ring. She left a voicemail. Her voice was different than I remembered, softer around the edges, almost careful. "Nora, honey, we saw an article about a farm near Yellow Springs. Your father and we didn't realize you were. We'd love to come see it. Call us back, sweetie." I played it once. Then I deleted it. A week passed. The herbs kept growing. The orders kept coming. Then Dad called directly. I was in the field, kneeling between rows of purple basil, dirt under every fingernail, when his name lit up my screen. I stared at it for 3 full rings. Against my better judgment, I answered, "Nora." His voice was the same, authoritative, measured, like he was chairing a meeting. "Your mother and I have been trying to reach you." "I know. We saw the article. The farm. It looks like you've done well." "I have." Silence. I could hear him recalibrating, searching for the angle. Then it came, the pitch dressed up as pride. "Look, I've been talking to some people, investors. There's real potential here if you scale it right. I could help you set up a proper business structure, bring in the right partners." "No. Nora, don't be emotional about this. This is business." "You're right. It is business. And you're not part of it." He exhaled hard, the sound of a man not used to hearing that word. "We're your family." Family doesn't tell a 17-year-old she's meant to support other people's dreams. Family doesn't write a check for one kid and hand the other a post-it note. The silence that followed was so long I thought he'd hung up. Then, quietly, "We made mistakes." "Yes, you did. Let us make it right." "You can't buy what you didn't build, Dad." I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline. Diego looked over from the greenhouse. "You okay, boss?" I nodded. "Yeah, I am." 3 weeks later, a FedEx envelope arrived at the farm. Inside was a cashier's check for $150,000. The memo line read, "For Nora, what we should have given." A handwritten note from Mom was folded underneath. "We were wrong. Please let us in." I sat on the porch with it for a long time. The creek murmured in the distance. A hawk circled above the east field. I thought about the girl who assembled her own bed frame alone in a sweltering dorm room. The one who passed out on a cold kitchen floor. The one who drove away from that house with everything she owned in the back seat of a 10-year-old Civic. Then I took the check inside, found a pair of scissors, and cut it into even strips. I placed the strips in a return envelope with a single index card. On it, I wrote, "I already have everything I need." I mailed it back the next morning. Certified. Return receipt requested. The receipt came back signed by my mother. I filed it in a drawer and went back to work. 2 weeks after that, I was inspecting the new hoop house when Marcy radioed from the office. "Nora, "There's a man at the gate, says he's your father." The security camera showed him standing by his Lexus, hands in his pockets, looking around like he was appraising the place. He wore pressed khakis and a golf shirt, weekend casual, the costume of a man who wanted to seem approachable. Behind him, the gravel drive stretched down to the county road. The farm spread out in every direction, 12 acres of order and intention that he had no part in building. I pressed the intercom. "You should have called." "I did call. You didn't answer." "That was the answer, Dad." He stepped closer to the camera. His face looked older than I expected. Thinner. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. 5 minutes. You had 22 years. You used them telling me I wasn't enough. His jaw tightened, then loosened. Something shifted behind his eyes, something I'd never seen before. He looked down at his shoes, then back at the lens. "I know I failed you, Nora. I know that now. Your mother cries about it. I don't sleep the way I used to. We got it wrong, deeply, permanently wrong, and I don't know how to fix it, but I'm here. Doesn't that count for something?" I let the silence hold. The wind moved through the herb rows, carrying the scent of rosemary up to the porch. A bee drifted past the camera. "It counts," I said. "But counting isn't enough. You don't get access to what I built just because you feel bad about what you didn't build with me. I'm not asking for access. I'm asking for a chance. And I'm telling you, chances are earned over time. Not purchased with a check. Not granted in 5 minutes at a gate." He stood there. I watched him on the screen. This man who had once seemed so large, so certain, so permanent. He looked small now, not pitiable, just accurately sized. "Go home, Dad. If you mean it, really mean it, then you'll give me the one thing you never gave me before." "What's that?" "Time. On my terms." He nodded once, slowly. Then he walked back to his car. The engine started. The gravel crunched. The camera watched until his taillights disappeared around the bend. I logged the visit in my farm journal. Date, time, weather conditions, notes. Evidence is better than memory. Memory bends, paper doesn't. A month later, Kyle showed up. Not at the gate. At the farmer's market in Yellow Springs, where I had a booth every Saturday. I was handing a bag of dried herb blends to a customer when I looked up, and there he was. Same confident stance, same expensive haircut. But something was off. His eyes looked tired. His smile didn't quite land. "Nice setup," he said, gesturing at the booth. "Thornfield Farm, cute name." "It's not meant to be cute." He picked up a jar of rosemary-infused oil, turning it over in his hands. "Look, I know you're angry." "I'm not angry, Kyle. Angry would mean I'm still waiting for something from you. I stopped waiting a long time ago." He set the jar down. "Dad told me about the check, and the gate thing. He's a mess, Nora. Mom, too. That's their work to do, not mine. I'm trying to help. You got $150,000 for business school, a furnished apartment in Chicago, and a graduation party with a tent. I got a Post-it note and loan papers. If you want to help, start by acknowledging that." His face changed. Not anger. Something closer to recognition, like a man stepping on a nail he forgot he dropped. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You're right," he said quietly. "It wasn't fair." "No, it wasn't. I should have said something back then." "Yes, you should have." He stood there for a long moment, customers drifting past us, the smell of kettle corn and fresh bread filling the air. Then he said, "Can I buy some of your stuff at least?" I almost smiled. Almost. $12 for the oil, $8 for the herb blend. He paid cash, left a 20, didn't ask for change. I watched him walk away through the crowd, his shoulders lower than when he arrived. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't reconciliation, but it was the first honest exchange we'd had in years. Summer deepened. The farm expanded. I broke ground on a commercial kitchen addition, funded entirely by revenue and a small SBA loan I qualified for on my own merits. Diego brought on 2 more part-timers for harvest season. Marcy streamlined the online orders until our shipping process was airtight. We launched a subscription box, monthly deliveries of seasonal herbs, dried blends, and small batch infused oils. It sold out in 3 days. Revenue that year would clear $340,000. One morning in August, I was walking the rows, checking the late summer sage, when my phone buzzed, A text from a number I didn't recognize. I opened it. It was a screenshot from Zillow, showing my property. Below it, a message from Kyle. Dad showed this to some real estate guy. He says the property's worth over $1.2 million with the improvements. Just thought you should know. I put the phone in my pocket and kept walking. That evening, Dad called again. This time, I let the voicemail play on speaker while I cleaned the kitchen. His voice was different now, stripped of its old authority, almost tentative. Nora, your brother mentioned the appraisal. That's not why I'm calling. I wanted to say that I drove past the farm today. I didn't stop. I just drove past. And I saw the rows, the greenhouse, the sign by the road. And I sat in my car for 20 minutes on the shoulder just looking at what you did. I'm proud of you. I know that word probably means nothing coming from me, but I wanted to say it, even if you never call back. I stood at the sink, water running over my hands. The voicemail ended. The house was quiet except for the crickets outside and the low hum of the refrigerator. I didn't call back, but I didn't delete it either. Fall arrived like a slow exhale. The fields turned gold at the edges. The last harvest came in heavy and fragrant. I preserved everything. Dried herbs hanging from the barn rafters in bundles, oils bottled and labeled, blends measured and sealed. On a cool October evening, I walked the perimeter of the farm the way I did every night, flashlight in hand, following the fence line I'd rebuilt post by post. Each one stood firm, each wire held taut. Boundaries, physical and otherwise, intact and deliberate. They had called me the support, the background, the one who wasn't meant to lead. But support was exactly what I'd built. A foundation so solid that 14 restaurants depended on it. A business so real that investors I'd never asked for circled it like moths. A life so complete that the people who dismissed me couldn't stop driving past it. Mrs. Alvarez called that night. "Mija, I saw the subscription box sold out again. You're going to need a bigger greenhouse." I laughed. "I know. Diego's already drawn up plans." "Good. And Nora?" "Yeah? Your father called me last week. Asked how you were doing." I paused. "What did you tell him?" "I told him to ask you himself. And then I told him that the best thing he ever did for you was nothing, because nothing made you build everything." The line went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I'm proud of you, but you already knew that." After we hung up, I stood on the porch, looking out over the fields. The moonlight caught the greenhouse glass and sent it glowing. The rosemary rows stood in dark lines against the soil, steady and patient, exactly like the woman who'd planted them. They had given Kyle everything: money, support, belief, a head start wrapped in a bow. They had given me silence and a sentence: "You're meant to support." So I did. I supported myself. I supported a business. I supported a community of farmers and chefs and customers who showed up because the work was honest. And peace, real peace, wasn't something anyone gave me. It was something I grew, row by row, season by season, with my own 2 hands in the dirt. They called me a failure. I called it the beginning. If you've ever been the one they counted out, the one they overlooked, the one who built something from the silence they left behind, then you already know what I'm about to say. You're not alone. And there are more stories like this, stories of quiet strength and the kind of revenge that doesn't shout but grows. Stay with me. The next one is already waiting.